What if I told you that in ancient Saxon England, you could literally pay for a chopped off nose in shillings, or lose your own nose for cheating on your spouse? Sounds crazy, right? In the next 20 minutes or so, we're diving into 10 mind-blowing Saxon laws, so odd they'll leave you thanking your lucky stars for modern laws. From bizarre body part price lists to fiendishly creative punishments, these real laws of the Anglo-Saxons will make your jaw drop. Stick around, because law number 1 is so shocking you might do a double take. And it's not what you'd expect. Welcome to Ancient Civilizations Discovered, where we unearth the wildest facts of our past. Today, we travel back over 1,300 years to the Anglo-Saxon era, a time of warrior kings, village councils, and some truly weird laws. Saxon law was all about keeping the peace in a rough and tumble world. These laws weren't written to bore. They dealt with blood feuds, holy church rites, and paying cash for crimes. Each law on our list comes straight from historical records and law codes of Saxon England. By the end, you'll learn how our medieval ancestors handled crime and punishment in ways that will astonish and entertain you. Ready for a time-traveling legal adventure? Let's count down the top 10 strangest Saxon laws. Number 10. Price tag on a life? The Vergild system. In Saxon England, every person literally had a price. No, not a metaphorical worth, an actual price in shillings set by law. This was called the Vergild, Old English for man price. If someone was killed or injured, the offender could pay the victim's family this set value to avoid a blood feud. Crazy, right? Imagine a legal price list for lives. Kill a peasant farmer, pay, say, 200 shillings. Kill a noble lord, fork out over 1,200 shillings or more. The higher the victim's rank, the higher the payout. For example, one code around 800 AD values a common ceorl, freeman, at 200 shillings, but a noble thane at 6 times that amount. And a king? Off the charts. One law set the king's Vergild at 30,000 units. That's 150 times a commoner. Can you imagine modern law saying, all right, you killed Bob, pay his family $2 million and we're square? It sounds like a medieval Price is Right. Yet, for the Saxons, Vergild kept the peace. It was meant to stop endless revenge killings by putting a price on vengeance. It's odd, but in a world without modern prisons, this pay or bleed system was their way of justice. It sure makes you see the phrase, everyone has their price, in a new light. Number 9. The Bad Hair Day Law, Free Women and Long Locks. Here's a head-scratcher. Having long hair could affect your punishment. One of the earliest Saxon laws, introduced by King Ethelbert of Kent around 600 AD, declared, if a freeborn woman with long hair misbehaves, let her pay 30 shillings compensation. Wait, what? Why mention her hair? In that society, long hair on a woman signified her free status, as enslaved women had shorn hair. So this oddly specific law basically says a free, respectable lady who misconducts herself, perhaps some social or moral offence, had to cough up a hefty fine. 30 shillings was a lot, about the Vergild for a modest freeman. This hints that a free woman was expected to uphold certain behaviour if she acted dishonourably. Her long hair, a symbol of freedom and honour, made it extra scandalous, hence a big fine. Imagine a modern law. If a person with a fancy suit commits jaywalking, double the fine. It sounds unfair today, but in Saxon times status was everything. Cutting a woman's long hair could even be used as punishment to symbolically unfree her. So, Saxon law literally let down its hair to enforce good conduct. Odd? Absolutely, but it shows how even hairstyle was serious business in ancient England. Number 8. Trial by ordeal, when boiling water decides your fate. Courtroom drama, Saxon style. If there weren't enough witnesses, they might hand you a boiling cauldron or a red-hot iron and say, "Prove your innocence." This was the infamous trial by ordeal, a judgment of God in early medieval law. One early reference comes from King Einar of Wessex, 690 AD, but it became more common by the 10th century. How did it work? For example, ordeal by hot water. The accused would plunge their hand into boiling water to grab a stone at the bottom. If after a few days the burns were healing cleanly, God had shown they were innocent. In ordeal by hot iron, they carried a red-hot iron bar a certain distance. If their wounds healed miraculously, they were cleared. It sounds like something out of a grim fairy tale, but it was real Saxon law. They genuinely believed divine intervention would protect the innocent. As an added twist, these ordeals took place in churches with priests present, praying over the boiling water or iron. Talk about mixing crime and punishment with faith. Rhetorical question. Would you stick your hand in boiling water to prove a parking ticket wasn't your fault? Under Saxon justice, if oath-swearing couldn't settle a case, this was the last resort. It was terrifying, but to them, God was the ultimate judge. And if you survived the ordeal unharmed, well, case closed, you're innocent. A painful way to prove a point, literally. Number 7. Wolf-head outlaws, open season on bad guys. Now for a law that turned criminals into literal game. The Saxons had a punishment called outlawry. If someone committed a terrible crime or fled justice, the king could declare them an outlaw, meaning they lost all legal protection. The phrase used was, "they shall bear a wolf's head." Basically, they became a wolf in the eyes of the law. And what happens to wolves? They could be hunted down and killed by anyone with no penalty. Yikes! Imagine being not just wanted, but literally considered a wild animal. If Bob the blacksmith was outlawed, any neighbour could legally chase him and take him out like a dangerous beast. Outlawry was the ultimate, "you're on your own, buddy." Even your family couldn't protect you. In fact, helping an outlaw was a crime too. One saga tells of a Saxon king's own brother being declared an outlaw. He was killed by a commoner because, hey, outlaws had no rights. This law kept communities safe by making examples of criminals. If you won't obey the law, you're cast out of human society. It's haunting and odd, basically early medieval's most dangerous game. It gives new meaning to man is a wolf to man, doesn't it? Number 6, counterfeiters, keep your hands, or not. Think twice before you mess with the money. Under King Athelstan, circa 930 AD, if you were caught making fake coins, the punishment was brutal. They'd cut off the hand you used to forge the coins and nail it to the mint where the crime happened. Yes, you heard that right. Your hand would be publicly displayed on the wall as a warning to other would-be counterfeiters. Talk about strict anti-counterfeiting laws. Coinage was serious business for Saxon kings. It represented royal authority. Athelstan wanted pure currency and honesty in trade, so he literally disarmed the fraudsters. Today, we'd just throw someone in jail for printing funny money. But Saxons, they made sure you got the point, or rather lost a point and an appendage. This grim penalty was written in Athelstan's law code, and it wasn't an isolated idea. Harsh physical punishments were creeping into later Anglo Saxon law as kings got tougher on crime. By now, you might notice a pattern. Saxons had no tolerance for thieves and cheaters. But if you think that's severe, just wait. Our next laws up the shock factor even more. We've seen broken laws and broken bones so far. But could it get worse? Oh yes. What if I told you the strangest Saxon law involves a totally unexpected crime and a punishment that will make you cringe? We're about to hit the top 5 weirdest laws. Stick around, because law number 1 is coming, and it's nothing you'd want to experience or even imagine. Back to the countdown. Number 5, pay up or tongue out. Oath helpers save the day. Here's a weird one. In many Saxon trials, you could walk free just by swearing an oath you're innocent, if enough people swore it with you. This was called compurgation, or trial by oath. Basically, the accused would round up a posse of trustworthy neighbours who'd vouch for his honesty under oath. If, say, 12 people swore that they believe you, then case closed, you're not guilty. No evidence? No problem, your reputation is evidence. Can you imagine resolving a court case today by bringing in a dozen friends to say, he's a good guy, he didn't do it, and that's the end of it? In Saxon England, that was often enough. If you were well liked and could find oath helpers, sometimes called oath swearers, you'd pass the test. But if your reputation stank, you might fail to find backers, and then you'd face other trials, like that boiling water ordeal. In one historical example, witnesses in Saxon courts testified about character, not the crime itself, wild but true. This law shows how tight-knit communities were. Everybody knew everybody, and your good name could literally save your skin. However, if you lied under oath, there were consequences. Perjury could be punished by cutting out your tongue. Yep, that escalated quickly. In short, justice back then wasn't blind. It was basically a popularity contest, combined with fear of divine retribution. Odd, but for them, it often worked. Number 4. No mercy for minor thieves. Even kids. You'd better sit down for this one. Under King Athelstan's tough laws, around 925 to 930 AD, a child as young as 12 could be executed for theft, even for a relatively small theft above about 8 pence in value. That's roughly the price of a few loaves of bread. Initially, Athelstan decreed, one shall not spare a thief caught red-handed over 12 years old for anything over 8 pence. In plain terms, if a 13-year-old stole something worth more than a trivial amount and got caught in the act, he could legally be put to death. Harsh much? Now, Athelstan did have a slight change of heart later. He raised the age to 15 and the minimum theft to 12 pence, saying the earlier rule seemed too cruel. How generous! Still, even teenagers faced capital punishment for petty crime if they resisted capture. If a youth thief surrendered peacefully, they might be spared execution, only to be imprisoned or ransomed by a huge payment, their weergild, the value of their life. If no one could pay, the kid could be sold into slavery as punishment. It's a chilling law, basically a zero-tolerance policy centuries before zero tolerance was a term. Picture a modern court sentencing a 7th grader to death for shoplifting. Unthinkable now, but in Saxon times, maintaining order was life or death. These kings believed harsh penalties for theft would scare everyone straight and protect the community's peace. Cruel? Absolutely. But in their world, stealing was one of the worst disruptors of the king's peace, and they reacted accordingly. Number 3, holy sanctuary, run to church, safe for a week. If all these frightening laws have you looking for an escape, the Saxons had one. Sanctuary. Under King Alfred the Great, late 9th century, if you were on the run, you could flee to a church and claim sanctuary. The law provided that no one could harm you there for up to 7 days. That respite was meant to give the fugitive time to negotiate compensation or prepare for trial, or in some cases to confess. And if anyone dragged you out by force, oh boy, they would face a heavy fine for violating the protection of the church. The idea was that churches were sacred places of mercy, off limits to bloodshed. Later on, this concept expanded. By the High Middle Ages, it became 40 days of sanctuary, but it all started in Saxon times with that short window of grace. Picture a medieval criminal version of, "Tag, you can't hit me, I'm on base." The church was a safe zone. After the time was up, the criminal would either come out to face justice or agree to go into exile, banishment, to avoid execution. Many chose to abjure the realm, meaning they'd leave the kingdom for good rather than risk punishment. This law is striking because it showed some compassion in a brutal justice system. Even murderers could find temporary shelter under God's roof. It's odd to modern eyes. A killer could literally be safe if he clung to the altar. But it was an early form of recognizing human rights, in a way. Sanctuary says even the accused deserves protection, at least for a time. In the savage world of Saxon retribution, that's almost mind-blowing. Number 2, scalp and sizzle. Gruesome penalties for slaves and thieves. As if cutting off hands wasn't enough, some Saxon laws read like a horror movie. Take King Edmund's law code around 943 AD. It prescribed that for a thieving slave, the punishment was to be whipped, scalped, and have their little finger cut off. Yes, you heard that correctly, scalped, as in having the skin of the head partially removed. The poor soul would be terribly marked and likely left alive as a living warning. Why the little finger too? Perhaps to mark them as a thief and ensure they never forget the king's justice. And remember our friend King Canute, early 11th century. He took it up another notch. His law code says for major crimes beyond simple theft, you could lose your eyes, nose, ears, upper lip, and scalp. Basically, a full facial mutilation. It's almost too gory to imagine, but archaeology confirms at least one young woman suffered this fate. A skull found in Basingstoke showed her nose, and lips had been cut off around the 8th or 9th century. This suggests these brutal penalties weren't just ink on parchment. They really happened. Such laws make us shudder today. They were intended to be worse than execution in some cases, a lifetime of disfigurement as punishment and public shame. It's hard to believe a legal system could be this cruel, but it was a different world. The Saxons believed pain could purify a crime and deter others. By making the punishment hideously memorable, they hoped nobody would dare copy the offender. It's one more odd and awful glimpse into how far law and order went in those days. Number 1. Off with her nose. Adultery's shocking punishment. We've saved the most jaw-dropping law for last. What was the penalty for a married woman caught in adultery under Saxon law? According to the law code of King Canute, 1020 AD, it was the removal of her nose and ears. Let that sink in. For cheating on her husband, a woman would be physically mutilated, her nose cut off and ears sliced away. This sounds like something out of a grim fairy tale, but it was very real. In fact, this gruesome punishment was considered a merciful alternative to execution. The idea was to mark the sin visibly without taking the woman's life. Equally shocking, there was no similarly permanent penalty for an adulterous man in those laws, a stark double standard. Men might be fined or chastised, but women got disfigured. The Saxons were devout Christians by Canute's time, and adultery was seen as a grave moral and social offence, not to mention property offence, since women were often seen as their husband's honour, so they chose to punish it in a way that branded the woman for life. There's even a term for this kind of punishment, Coventry punishment, used in later folklore for nose slitting. Physical evidence backs up that this wasn't just talk. Archaeologists discovered a young female skull from around the 8th or 9th century with the nose cleanly cut through to the bone and the upper lip sheared off, likely an adulteress or accused of some immoral act. It's the first archaeological proof of this law's enforcement, and it's chilling. This law truly blows the mind and breaks the heart. Imagine a society where a moment of passion could cost a woman her face. It's a dark finale to our list, highlighting how harsh and oddly specific Saxon laws could be. It also shows us how far we've come, thank goodness. From today's perspective, it's almost unbelievable, and that's why it's at number 1 on our list of mind-blowing Saxon laws. From priced body parts and boiling water trials to wolf-headed outlaws and ghastly mutilations, the laws of the Saxons were nothing if not memorable. They lived in a world where keeping order often meant paying in silver or in blood. These 10 laws showed us a legal system very different from ours, one deeply rooted in honour, retribution and communal values, and sometimes shockingly brutal or bizarre by modern standards. Yet, weird as they were, these laws laid the groundwork for English justice, believe it or not. Over time, Vergil evolved into fines, oath-swearing into jury trials, and thankfully trial by ordeal and mutilation fell out of use. So, which Saxon law shocked you the most? Was it the idea of putting a price on a person, or the chilling image of an adulterer's punishment? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into the stranger side of history, hit that like button and consider subscribing for more wild tales from the past. After all, as crazy as our world can be, studying these odd laws reminds us how much civilization has evolved, and that makes for one enlightening story. See you next time on Ancient Civilizations Discovered, where history's secrets come alive.